Kissy Missy is still alive and the prototype needs her more than ever. This isn't just survival, it's the start of a trap meant to turn her and maybe even Poppy against us. And once you see the evidence, you'll realize you're looking at a strategy no one's been talking about until now. Let's start by exposing the first layer of this plan, how Kissy Missy is already being used as bait to lure the prototype's victims exactly where he wants them. At the end of Chapter 3, we all heard it, Kissy's terrified screams echoing through the facility as Poppy and the player descended in the elevator. How did Poppy react? By immediately taking the elevator back up, desperate to rescue her friend. And the prototype, he surely had to know that Kissy could defend herself successfully. After all, she displayed immense strength during the hour of joy. There's no way he actually expected her to die at that moment. It was likely all just a ruse to attract Poppy. Now, did the prototype directly benefit from this attack? Well, probably not, since there's no evidence implying this, but there's always a chance that this was just a test, a way to see if Poppy or even us could be lured in by using Kissy as bait in the future. So, with all this being said, how do we even know that the prototype was responsible for Kissy's attack? Well, when we first reunite with Kissy in Chapter 4 after her ambush, it just so happens to be the exact moment the prototype walks by. That alone heavily implies that he had something to do with it, but if we need even more proof, then we can turn to the Story So Far series on Mob Entertainment's YouTube. These videos recap the events of the first 3 chapters. The unusual part? They're narrated by the Doctor. He had been watching us from the very beginning, and when the moment came that Kissy was attacked, he didn't seem shocked at all. He definitely knew it was coming. And considering the Doctor had connections to the prototype, that only makes things more suspicious.
Have I made an error in allowing your survival? Of course not. We just need more time to perfect the time.
This unlikely alliance, if you can call it that, between the prototype and the Doctor suggests that if Kissy's ambush was planned, the prototype probably informed the Doctor beforehand. That would explain why the latter wasn't startled at all when it happened, why he reacted so casually. But of course, just because the prototype may be using Kissy as bait, that doesn't necessarily mean he needs her alive. After all, he was perfectly fine with blowing up the ground beneath both of us in Chapter 4, putting Kissy and the player in serious danger. Although, this moment can actually be explained. By this point, the prototype had already seen Kissy defend herself before. He likely knew she would survive, meaning this wasn't an attempt to eliminate either of us, but rather just another act of sabotage. And we know the prototype loves sabotage. Remember how he blew up Safe Haven even though we weren't there at the time? Yeah, this was more of the same strategy.
I let him away, didn't I? The generator's fine. It's...
The only reason the prototype committed such an act was to slow us down, to hinder our progress, and ultimately try to make things harder for us and our allies. But what if I told you, instead of using Kissy as bait, the prototype is actually using her to sabotage us directly? Think back to Chapter 3 when Kissy Missy suddenly jumped us outside of Home Sweet Home. Poppy claims this was because the place made her tense, which seems valid on its own, but looking back, that reaction seemed way too sudden, especially when you consider that Kissy had previously helped us in Chapter 2. Why the sudden change in behavior? Something doesn't add up. I believe Kissy's attack in Chapter 3 wasn't just a random outburst, it was actually the prototype controlling her. Think about it. Kissy is on board with Poppy's plan to stop the prototype, to avenge all those lives that were lost during the Hour of Joy, and yet she actively participated in this very massacre, an event the prototype himself orchestrated. And why did she attack the workers? Because the prototype commanded her to. We already know that this experiment can influence toys telepathically, or at least certain ones. It makes sense that he can't do this with Poppy, since she was created long before the Bigger Bodies initiative by Elliot Ludwig himself. She's one of a kind, which is the exact reason the Playtime Co. scientists would physically dissect her for studies, whereas Kissy Missy is Experiment 1172, and Huggy Wuggy, just 2 experiments prior at 1170, was clearly being telepathically communicated with in the spin-off game Project Playtime.
Get up. They are trying to build more toys, more like you. It has to be stopped.
Just as he did 10 years before the events of the game during the Hour of Joy, the prototype instructed Kissy through her mind once again, this time ordering her to attack us in play care. But this wasn't just a random act of violence, it was yet another test. A way for the prototype to see if Kissy would still obey him, and it's safe to say that she passed. Now that Kissy has proven her obedience, it's only a matter of time before the prototype inevitably takes full control. He'll probably twist her personality, turning her against us and Poppy permanently when the right moment arrives. But what if that's not enough for him? What if he has even bigger plans for Kissy Missy? If you recall, Poppy was not a fan of Huggy Wuggy. She even proudly mentioned how we supposedly took him down. But here's where things get interesting. She said this right in front of Kissy Missy, who, according to the orientation notebook, is Huggy's better half. Now, sure, that's referring to their toy versions. However, in the official Sleep Well music video, we clearly see that the bigger body versions of Huggy and Kissy also got along very well. With this in mind, it's safe to assume that deep down, Kissy is not happy about what we did to Huggy, and she's definitely not thrilled about Poppy's reaction to it. That said, Kissy Missy still appears to be on our side. She understands that the prototype has to die no matter what, and for now, working with us is the best way to make that happen. Plus, Kissy can probably empathize with the fact that we acted out of self-defense. I mean, Huggy was literally chasing us down like a wild animal, and for Poppy to have mentioned Huggy's apparent death so out of the blue like this, it means that she must have told Kissy about our encounter with the blue beast beforehand. Where does the prototype tie into this? Simply put, he sees an opportunity. He knows he can exploit Kissy's love for Huggy Wuggy. As we all know, Huggy somehow survived his fall. What some might not realize, however, is why. It wasn't by chance, it wasn't luck. The prototype repaired him. This was confirmed by a now-deleted Discord message from Mob Entertainment's CEO. Now, at first glance, it might seem like the prototype fixed Huggy just to send him after us again, but what if there's another reason? What if this is all part of a bigger plan? With Kissy Missy now injured and vulnerable, the prototype has the perfect opportunity to strike. He could take control of Huggy Wuggy just as he did in Project Playtime, using him to lure Kissy into a place where she can't escape. After all, Kissy believes Huggy is gone, so if he were to suddenly reappear, would she even hesitate to follow him? Of course not. We also can't overlook the fact that despite her physical strength, Kissy tends to be quite emotionally unstable, a rather anxious creature, something that was even stated in her experiment report found in Chapter 4, and that's exactly what makes her the perfect target for the prototype's schemes. However, Kissy wouldn't be the only one walking into a trap, because if us and Poppy were to find out that Kissy Missy was trapped somewhere, we would be drawn straight to her, and that's when the prototype would strike. He'd have us and Poppy exactly where he wants us, all part of his grand plan, which likely involves us. Compared to the first method we discussed, this would be a far more effective way of luring us in. Instead of just trying to sabotage us, this time the prototype would make sure we were completely helpless. What do you think we'll see from Kissy in Chapter 5? Drop your theories in the comments. Also, check out this next video here.